Good to see you. It's beautiful out here and there's birds singing. I'm just going to turn the camera around and show you. Somewhere in those trees, over there, is a tui. I don't know if we're going to see it, but anyway. You can hear it, that's the main thing. Look at the day. I'm standing out here enjoying this sky and the last few leaves on the cherry tree because we had wind and rain, so most of them are gone. Because I'm about to start talking about what I've been doing this week on my God of Me writing project, because that's what it is right now. It'll be recording and creating tools and my husband's drawing pictures. But right now it's a writing project. And look, the magnolia tree has just dropped its leaves. Last week it was covered in leaves. Now there are about 3 left. 2, 4. You can count them. So, yeah, I'm just out here because this is a Facebook Live if you're watching me on YouTube. And it always takes a little time for the live to show up and for my husband to find it and share it out. So during that time, we get to share my front garden. I used to show people the back garden too, but then the Wi-Fi got weaker. And that's a good thing, actually. But it just means I get to stay in the front garden and it's gorgeous here, so no complaints. This is the hen and chicken fern. And those little babies, when the fronds fall down onto the ground, they can make new ones. So, yeah, this is the garden. And this is the kawakawa tree. And I planted that magnolia, and I planted this. And that huge cherry tree. I've been here a little while now, and so the trees have got trunks. But there was nothing here when I first moved into this house about 30 years ago. So, just doing a little wander around. The sunshine is beautiful. It's quite cold, but I always love to see the sun coming through leaves. If you get close, look at the lines on them. It's such a small thing, but I really enjoy that level of detail. And this fuchsia that just keeps growing, and the other fuchsia that just keeps flowering. Let me walk into the garden so you can see it. And there's just flowers, and it's nearly midwinter. So, yeah, so we're out here. Let's step back. Oh, and I will show you, this is I think it's the only rose in the garden at the moment. It's beautiful, it smells really nice. It's the compassion rose. And you can see it's it's not actually a big sticky thing, but it is at the moment. I've got to encourage it to make more sprouts. But it's just given me this gift. And so this is the garden now. See how thickly the ground is mulched. This is the garden now, tucked up for winter. That's how I think of it. And it's really nice because the front garden is now organised. Now I can get into the mess in the back garden. And look at all of this. The Sparaxis is going to be very colourful in a few months. But meanwhile, it's just so green. And it's rich and it's beautiful. And there are the fallen leaves on the ground, which are my favourite part of this season. And a few left on the cherry tree. So, now I'm going to turn the camera around, walk back inside, and tell you what I've been doing this morning. So my name is Oneness Evolving, in case you don't know, and I have this crazy project that kind of owns me, and I get to do it once a week, because that's just the available slot that I have in my life, because it's writing right now. Right now I've just got to write the content for a website. And the thing about writing, for me, is that I can't sit down and write for 20 minutes or 30. I need a slot. I need a chunk of time. And there's one morning a week that I have carved out a chunk of time in which to do this. Excuse me. So for me, that's Wednesday mornings. And that's what I've just been doing. And now that I'm inside, I'm warmer. So I'm going to take my hat off. And my gloves, because it really was quite cold this morning. And I'll probably put my gloves or my hat back on, but right now I'm warm enough. And so let me tell you what I've done. And I thought for a while, after I'd done my writing, because I have to make little notes to think, what am I going to tell you about? And I have to write a blurb to go on this video. Hello, lovely to see you. And I was thinking, what the hell am I going to talk about? Because the thing that I did the most today was actually take a story that was all jumbled and had the wrong bits in the wrong places, and I sorted it out. I did a lot. I mean, this is just a process of writing. Hi, Mega Perfection. It's been ages. Hi, Taylor. G'day, gorgeous beings. It's lovely to see you. So this is the thing with writing, this is the way I do writing. I brain dump stuff out. I've got a topic or a thing I want to say, blurt, right? And then I start organizing it and I tell little stories. When I'm writing about content, there's a long story and then there are little chapters in the story, and I write them. And at the end of last week, I knew that it was like a jigsaw puzzle where I had this piece and this piece and this piece and this piece, but none of them fitted together. It wasn't flowing. And so today I sorted out the flow, and I've really told the story of what happens in theta, which is, when we're small, our brain is mostly making theta brain waves, and it's doing that because we're in a hypnotic state and we are absorbing information from our environment at a very high rate of speed, because it's basically we're downloading an operating system. Because you cannot go to school to learn how to be human. You just have to upload that information into your brain, because it's not completely blank when you're born. You have a genetic program, you have the experiences that you have inside your mother, which you share them with your mother. But once you're born, your brain, for the first 2 years, you're asleep with your eyes open, you're in delta, and then in your second year sometime, and I looked it up, and it's like some people say that the time that we spend in theta is from age 2 to age 7, maybe it's from 2 to age 5, somewhere in there. For that period of time, the brain is in theta, which is a hypnotic state, and information just goes straight in. And I've talked a lot about in the last couple of weeks. And that's not really what I want to talk about today. But the point I did want to make just about my writing process is that I actually took a piece from here and I stuck it up there, and I took a bit there and thought that needs to be in a completely different document, because there was just all these things that didn't quite fit. And once I'd done that, then I had to find all the places, and there were several of them where I'd said this and I'd said that, and they were the same thing with only little bits that were different. So I had to graft them together and remove the repetition. And that's just the process of writing for me. So I've done that, and I'm really pleased that I have finally written the story about theta brain waves, which are the brain waves between 4 and 8 cycles a second, to my satisfaction. And there's something that I do for my patrons on Patreon that every Friday, because that's when it fits for me to do, I sit down for a few minutes and I actually read to them what I've written for that week. And the point being that I've already read to them what I'm going to read to them this week, but in a completely different order. And so I'm just going to read it again, and so they can hear actually what I'm creating. And my husband and I are starting to batter ideas around for pictures again. He had to get, we haven't recycled the old tablet yet, but he's got a new drawing tablet. And just getting that working and figuring out how to use it's been a bit of a journey. But he's back into drawing pictures, so now it's like, how do we put this stuff into pictures? Because I don't want there to just be words on this screen. I want there to be pictures, and I want there to be exercises, so that everything is interactive and experiential. And ideally, you can share it with your friend. Because learning is always better when you share it with someone and you talk about it and you pull it apart and you put it back together again and you figure it out. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to be rereading this story to my patrons, but this time it's complete. So I thought, what am I going to talk about today? And the thing that I want to talk about today is something that I really teased out. And I argued for a little while about whether I was even going to put it in there. And it's this whole thing of body memory. We have body memory, we have brain memory. Because things don't just get memorized in your brain. You make synaptic connections in your brain when you think a thought, when you learn a fact, when you have an experience. All that stuff is stored in synaptic connections between neurons, and that's what allows our brain to scan the environment. It does it all the time, whether we're noticing or not, and go, oh, and you're not noticing, but your body notices, your brain notices, the information comes in, the temperature's changed, and you just reach for a piece of clothing. You're not even thinking about it. You're so busy doing what you're doing. we have things in our brain and our body that they're like programs. They're like, an MP3 or a movie that just run. And that's really useful, by the way, because you don't want to have to learn how to walk and talk and speak and, and do everything that you do every day. All of that stuff is the 95% of us that we don't even think about. We don't think about it, unless you have a disability and then you think about it. We all know how to walk. We all know how to swallow. We all know how to breathe until something goes wrong with your nervous system and then you can't and then you're in trouble. These things are part of our 95% of us that is unconscious, it's memorized, it's programmed. They're just things we do and we do them so well we don't think about them. And so part of what I was writing about in this story that I've been telling is that, yes, we've got different brainwave states, but there's all this information coming into the brain, right? I mean, there's the percentage of the information that we consciously process as opposed to what actually comes into our brain is tiny. I don't actually know what it is. I haven't looked it up. It's at 0.2 or 0.1%. I mean, it's infinitesimal. There's so much information. And it's a good thing that we only process a little bit that's important to us, because if we didn't, we'd go mad. Really, there's just so much information. So how does the brain prioritize? And I spoke about this last week too. It pays attention to things that are very strong. I stuck my hand in the fire and it got burned. That's a strong response. It's pain. I'm going to remember that. It pays attention to things that happen often. Parent is feeding the baby food. It's a great example. It says, here's the food, you give them the spoon, you open their mouth, and the baby has mirror neurons and imitates the mouth, but the fact that the spoon and the mouth opens and they learn to do it by repetition. You've got to feed them often, they're just going to learn to do it. And the other thing, which is what I want to talk about today, is the concept that if something goes on for a long time, the brain pays attention, because if it goes on for a long time, it's probably something I'm going to have to deal with. And something can go on for a long time, like, the seasons turn and you notice that it's hot and then it's cold and then it's hot and then it's cold again. Or you can have a single experience that's quite intense, but it's not like pricking your finger on a needle. It's like you have something that's difficult that goes on for a day. Or alternatively, something that's amazing that goes on for a day. Either way, because it's lasted for a long period of time, not just a short instant, the brain is going to pay attention. It's going to make a memory. So I told this story about a little baby, and it's living somewhere that isn't tropical, right? And its mother is giving it a bath, and the baby's used to being bathed. But this particular day, the mother is bathing the baby, and she reaches for a towel. She reaches behind her, and for some reason, whatever, she loses her balance. She falls. She knocks herself on the head, and she's out. And I mean, now for a baby, that's a dangerous situation. The baby's just come out of the bath, the baby is wet, and mum's not there, and there's nobody else in the house. And so what happens, of course, is that, it's a chilly-ish room, because we're not in the tropics, and the baby starts to get cold. And the baby's 3 months old, so a 3-month-old baby can't regulate its own body temperature. There's nothing it can do. So by the time Dad comes along and rescues the baby, the baby's pretty cold, hands and feet are a bit cold and it's kind of sluggish and it's crying is weak. And because I looked up, that's what happens when a baby gets hypothermic. Hi, beautiful, lovely to see you. And Dad goes, oh my God, my baby's cold, and puts it inside his clothes to warm it up, and then he calls for help and does all those things. But what's happening in the baby's brain? Because the baby is just a baby, right? The baby's still in delta. Or later, if you have a small child in a similar situation, the brain's in theta, the brain takes a snapshot of everything. It knows how the bathroom smells and sounds and looks and tastes even, because smell and taste are very close together. And of course, it knows how it looks. And, the baby gets warmed up and mum doesn't have to go to hospital. And the next day, when mum takes baby to the bathroom to have a bath again, the baby starts to cry. Well, what's going on? The baby's brain has made a memory about the fact that this is the place where I got cold, and I mean, it was pretty dangerous, and I was without my mother for half an hour, which for a small baby is like forever, because, it hasn't been alive for very long, so half an hour is a long, long time for a 3-month-old baby. the brain has made a memory and said, oh my God, the last time I was here, something really bad happened. I don't want that to happen again, so I'm going to do everything I know how to do to prevent it, which for a 3-month-old baby is to cry, right? Go, no, I don't want to be here. Because it's an unconscious memory. Baby has no conscious brain, but the brain has observed that in this place, when it smells and tastes and touches, feels and sounds and everything like this, that happened. It could happen again. I'd rather it didn't happen again. I'm gonna try and stop it from happening again. So that's what the brain does. But there's another thing that can happen when the mother takes the baby into the bathroom, the next day. She's fine. Didn't get hurt. It just, she got knocked out. So she's taking the baby into the bathroom. The baby's still wearing its clothes. But she notices that the baby's got cold. The baby's wearing its clothes and it's got cold. What's going on? So the memory isn't just in the baby's brain. The memory is also in the baby's body. The baby's body had to withdraw energy from the hands and the feet, because they got blue. They got cold. It had to withdraw energy into its core as a strategy for survival. That's what hypothermia is. And the baby has nothing else to do. That's what our autonomic nervous system does. If it's too cold, if we can't maintain our body temperature, the first thing that gets cold is our hands and our feet. So the body did that to survive the challenging situation yesterday. It did that. So now the body, it's the body and the brain are always talking to each other. So never one is in isolation from the other one. So the body is informed by the fact that the brain has noticed that, this is the same place. And as well as the baby crying because it's trying to not go back to the same place, the body has now got a program, it's got a memory, it's got an unconscious memory that says, the last time I was here, I got really cold. I better get ready in case I get cold again. And so the baby's body, all by itself, pulls energy back from the hands and the feet, and now the baby feels cold to the mother, and the mother is thinking, what's going on? My baby's still wearing clothes, but its hands and feet are cold. The baby's autonomic nervous system, the automatic nervous system that runs us, remembers that place. It remembers how it sounds and feels and smells and tastes and touches and everything, and it says, I better get ready for being cold. I'm going to withdraw energy from, my extremities. And so there's a part of the brain called the amygdala, and there's two of them. It's like sheep and sheep, one sheep, two sheep, one amygdala, two amygdala. We've got two amygdala, and they're in here about an inch inside, sort of above our ears. And they're part of the emotional brain. And the amygdala, it's been discovered that there's aspects of our vision that are controlled by the amygdala, or that actually connect with the amygdala. And the point being that the amygdala actually sees problems coming before we do. And that's really handy if, there's some big predator that's jumping out of a bush to eat you. Your amygdala will have you running away from it before you've even realized what's going on. It's a really useful survival strategy. But in this situation, the baby's amygdala have said, this is bad, I'm going to get cold. And it's a false alarm, because mum's there and the baby's wearing clothes. But there's no filter on this. The brain just says, this is the same situation as yesterday. I'm going to get cold. That was bad. I don't want to have that happen again. I'm going to cry and I'm going to withdraw energy from my extremities. And I'm going to get cold. But, not as cold as if I was going to die. So this is the thing. Our brain, this is the point I was making. Our brain is super smart. It can spot problems coming so far ahead of us, and we can use it to solve problems, and we can work things out. That's the conscious mind that does that. But at the same time, we have these survival systems, which are really cool if you're a cave person, or you're living anywhere where there are threats that can jump out and kill you, and you have to be ready to run away or fight or hide from it. But in our society, there are still lots of things that our brain can register as a problem, like that scary person who yelled at us last week, or that school test that's coming up and we're just like, oh my God, I'm going to fail this, or whatever it is, or that person that we're afraid of displeasing, or that thing we're scared of doing. And the same survival system goes off, and it just reaches for what it knows to do, which is pretty much to run, fight, or hide. And the reason why that story about the baby is kind of relevant to me is because I myself, I can remember this moment when it happened. I was standing on a cold day in Wellington, because I used to go into Wellington and work. Now I work at home. And I was, I had my clothes on and everything. And I was waiting for a bus. And I looked at my hand, and from here up, my finger had gone white. I thought, what's that? And I mean, I sort of shook it around and the circulation came back and that was fine. But I eventually discovered that I had a mild case of Raynaud's syndrome, which is a situation where the body does exactly what that baby does. It shuts down the peripheral circulation, so you get fingers that go white, or the whole hand will go white, or your toes will go white. And I had a very mild thing, and it's actually, apparently it's an autoimmune condition. And it was just something that I watched slowly get worse, and it was never very bad. And I say was because I've changed some of those deep programs in my autonomic nervous system. And although I still sometimes have an aberrant response to the cold, it isn't anywhere like it used to be. Because I'd memorized that shutdown. My body had memorized it. I don't know when. I have no idea. When I decided that the appropriate response to standing on the street waiting for a bus was to withdraw energy from my hands, because that's what happened. And they go white, they go white sort of to start with here, and then maybe the whole fingers right down to the knuckles. I don't think the whole hands ever went, but they just went really white because all the little blood vessels went, because there was a contraction. Because it had been memorized in my body and I had nothing to do with it. Not consciously, but unconsciously I'd memorized that contraction as a way of being somehow. And there was something in my environment that particular day just triggered it off. And then it became a thing that I sort of got used to it and thought, oh, well, this is who I am now. Well, I learned later that can change. And it has changed. It really has. So our brains are amazing. Our bodies are amazing. And that 95% of us that we don't know that we are, that we don't realize is just memorized, and it could be from a traumatic situation, or it could just be from something that happens over and over and over again. Someone says, oh, you're sweet, but you're not very smart. I love you, but, you're just not very good at this. Or, the worst things that parents can say when they're having a bad moment or a bad month or a bad year. All of that goes in to our unconscious operating system. And when our brain recognizes something in our external environment that matches even one small portion of what it is that has been memorized, everything about those situations, because up until the age of 5 or 6 or 7, when our brain speeds up out of theta and starts going into alpha and beta rhythms, all of the information in our environment just goes in. And if the people around us are having a bad day, well, that's just how life is. And if they're saying bad things about us, well, that's just who I am. I am that. Because our brain isn't going fast enough for us to have an analytical mind to say, hey, that's wrong. And besides, there's that person over there and they don't speak to their child like that. And there's that other person over there and they live in a different kind of place and they have different kinds of experiences. Our brain is not working fast enough to do that. So that's the importance, of our first 5, 6, 7 years. By the time we're 8, we've definitely, moved out of mostly theta into mostly alpha and then eventually into mostly beta brainwaves. But up until we get into mostly alpha and then beta, there is no filter in our brain, and everything goes in. We believe it is true. We don't even know that we believe it is true. And then things in our lives come along and we think, why can't I overcome this? Why do I feel so bad about myself? Why can't I make a different choice? That's why. Because there's an unconscious memory that's not just in your brain, it's in your body that says, you're useless, you can't do this. And by the way, you know, these are the things I'm overcoming. It's not just you. It's me. This is what happens. And the thing is that there was no threat when I was standing there on the street. Hi, Carrie Ann. Nothing was going on. There was a reason for my circulation to shut down in my hands. But something in me said that there was. There was a false alarm. And it just said, when you get cold, there's a threat. We need to shut down the circulation. If we don't do that, you're going to die. Otherwise, why would my body's automatic systems do that? That didn't make any sense. Not to me, but at a body level it did. So this is why I say that our brains and our bodies are also super stupid, because we have these systems in place, but there are so many false alarms. The problem with the false alarms is that many of them are programmed before we're old enough to realize they're going in. And they're very powerful, right? The survival responses are really powerful. They need to be. If there's lions and tigers and, you know, attacking tribes or whatever out there, your survival responses need to be strong. But we're living in a different world now. Still have the same responses. They're still really strong. And we think, why can't I change? Why can't I feel better about myself? This is a big chunk of the reason why. It doesn't stop once we go into alpha and beta. It's just that now we have a conscious brain that can say, that's bullshit. And we can say, that's bullshit, and really know it and feel it. And at the same time, that program that's been put into us for the first 5, 6, 7 years is saying, yeah, you're saying it's bullshit, but I know it's true. And that's the reason why it's so difficult for us to change sometimes, because we've got 5% of the conscious us that's up there going, I really don't agree with that. I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to think this way. I don't want to believe what that person said. I don't want to believe what my parents said about me. I don't want to believe all the failures I've had and all of that. But meanwhile, our body, which carries the other 95% of us, because it needs to, otherwise we forget who we are and how to do things, is saying, so what? This is who I am, as opposed to this is who I think I am. I believe this. I feel this. It's true for me. So this is why there are so many false alarms, because they're recorded in our body, and our body is an automatic thing, and we need it to be. And this is why when you want to be different and you're thinking, why is this so damn hard? Because you got 5% here and 95% is below the top of your neck and the brainstem and the body, and it's all automatic. And you've got to know how to change that. And that ultimately is what God of Me is about. And I'm going to stop now because I'm truly out of time. But I thought I had nothing to say today. Apparently I had plenty. Thank you for staying with me and for sharing this time. I will be back next week. And if you haven't checked out my Patreon, please do. You can follow me for free, and there are things that my free followers get that everybody else doesn't. And if you want to support me, then for $5 a month, you can do that and you get extra bonuses. So there's lots of good stuff there. It's a journey. It will grow. And thank you so much for sharing, for liking, for being present, and for subscribing. And I will see you again next week. Until then, lots of love.